Hello everyone and welcome once again to the FN Studios. I am your host John Ramdeen and this is Fight News Now Extra. In a bit, Robin Black and John Pollock will join me to chat about the sport of mixed martial arts' hottest topics. And the news today, a former UFC title challenger is interested in another high-profile grappling match, a monsoon is headed to Boston, and King Mo gets a new opponent for his upcoming bout. Former UFC middleweight and light heavyweight title challenger Chael Sonnen has turned down a mixed martial arts bout with rival Wanderlei Silva in the axe murderer's native Brazil. The American said he will honor the NSAC suspension, but would consider a submission wrestling match at the prestigious Metamoris event. Sonnen is no stranger to no-gi grappling events. In the past, he has competed at ADCC, wrestling events throughout college, and this past August, he faced off the top BJJ player Andre Galvao at Metamoris, losing by rear naked choke. The UFC returns to Boston in the new year and will feature a welterweight tilt between Strikeforce veteran Lorenz Larkin and New England's John Doomsday Howard. The event will take place at TD Gardens on January 18th and will be headlined by a 145-pound matchup between Dennis Seaver and rising star Conor McGregor. The Monsoon is 1-4 in the UFC, while Howard is 2-2 since his return to the sport's biggest show. And lastly, ATT's Joe Videpo steps up on short notice to take on former Strikeforce light heavyweight champion King Mo Lawal at the next Bellator event, which is scheduled for November 15th in San Diego, California. Lawal was originally set to face UFC veteran Tom DeBlas, but an injury has forced the Ricardo Almeida-trained fighter out of the contest. Videpo has won 3 straight, while Mo is coming off a KO victory over Glory veteran Dustin Jacoby.
Here we are alongside John Ramdeen and Robin Black. Lots of news as always to discuss, and one item over the past weekend, which I think is going to continue to just enter the news cycle, is Wanderlei Silva, and whether this man is going to fight again. There are rumors of him fighting in Brazil, getting an offer to go to Japan on New Year's Eve. I mean, that's the one thing. If once you are a star, you will find fights out there. Do you really believe we have seen the final fight from Wanderlei Silva?
No way. Number one, fighters love to fight and they want to hang things up on their own terms, and Wanderlei Silva isn't done, especially when he knows that his name is big enough that he'll be able to get fights all over the world. People are going to offer this guy big fights, and to take a fight with Phil Baroni in Japan on New Year's Eve, sign me up, because we're going to see some carnage.
Yeah, carnage is right. I'd love to see the fight. And I mean, imagine you put him in Brazil, you put him in Curitiba against, anybody. People are going to see it. But I don't think we are necessarily going to see this. And it ain't a commission because he's suspended. It ain't that.
Yep.
He has a services contract with the Ultimate Fighting Challenge, the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Challenge. And he has that. And he is under contract. So I can go put him on in Brazil. I'm going to get my ass sued right off of me. It's going to fall down the hill. And you get sued so bad unless the UFC were to decide a guy like Wanderlei Silva will let him go. What's the upside? The audience will love that. Wanderlei will love that, and I think he's earned it. But the downside is every fighter who says, well, I'm done, let me go, you can't have that. You can't have that. You make deals with these guys. You can't just let them go.
It really comes down to, the UFC looking at the fact that, hey, this guy needs to make a living out there. We can't use him. There's no way the UFC can use this guy. Do we just allow him to go out there and go out into the Wild West, essentially, which is what he's going to have to do. For any promotion that is thinking of using this guy, you have to realize your thoughts of ever coming to the U.S., of ever getting a promoter's license in this country, will be out the window for this one fight. So if you're in Japan and you're happy to just promote in Japan, cool, but don't ever think of coming to the States if you use this guy.
No, I agree, and that's why if I'm Cage Warriors, I'm like, well, I don't care if I go to the States. We're based here. We're all over Europe and the Middle East, and Wanderlei Silva is a huge star wherever we go. So we're willing to take whatever risk, but it comes down to the UFC's perspective.
Is that though the smart, long term here? This is one fight, and say you are a Cage Warriors, and we've brought up a lot of fighters, and then one day the UFC is looking at getting developmental leagues out there, and you've just cross your name off the list because they're not going to get in bed with you. And I just think as a promoter, you should never be closing doors to business opportunities out there. Pride. they wanted to come to the U.S., had they had that same mentality, they wouldn't have gotten their ability to come to Las Vegas. And I just think long term, you can't predict where you're going to be in 3 years if you're a business and you're in charge of making your employees get paychecks at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm sure Cage Warriors, with the idea of what happens in the future if we could partner with the UFC, but they're also looking at their immediate business, and their immediate business is, how do we put people on the seats? How do we get big ratings? You know how you do that? You sign Wanderlei Silva. Wanderlei Silva transcends mixed martial arts, and everybody wants to watch this guy perform. And I think if Cage Warriors can get a hold of Wanderlei Silva, that's good business.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, though. We have seen a lot of organizations throughout the years pay big money for big stars, not know how to promote it. They kind of think, well, I'll just put these two superstars together and I'll instantly make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yep. Do you know how to promote it? Do you know anything about pay-per-view? Do you know anything about any of these things? It's a huge one. I just hope my man Wanderlei gets to fight for a living if that's what he still loves doing, and I think he does. I hope the man gets to do it, but the UFC has a contract with him, and right now I don't think they're in any hurry to set a precedent that if you're done fighting here, you can go do whatever you want.
Well, I mean, at the same time, it depends on what the UFC's philosophy is. If, like, you know what, we're going to give this guy the gears, he said some bad things about us, we're going to make sure he never fights and he never makes a living. But on the other side, if they're like, you know what, let him go.
Sport.
He's a fighter. He's been around this game for a long time. He fought in the UFC back in the day, losing to Vitor Belfort and Tito Ortiz. He's put his time in. Let him go and try to make some dollars.
Now, conversely, if you're Chael Sonnen, is there more of a strategic play here where the end game is getting back to the UFC, getting back onto Fox Sports 1, and not wanting to rock the boat and challenge anything by going out there for a quick payday?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, I think Chael Sonnen, he probably realized, this is an opportunity blown by, me getting the boot from Fox. Yes, that would be the goal because you have to look at life after fighting. But right now, this is how Chael Sonnen makes money. So you get back to how you can make the most money possible.
I got to go points for Pollock. For Chael Sonnen, this guy has been a superstar at the highest level. He's had a moment where he has to go and tuck his tail between his legs, but he wants to come back there. And I think every step he makes will be with that in mind.
You know what the happy compromise is? Chael Sonnen has just started a podcast. He needs a co-host. Wanderlei Silva and Chael Sonnen. There
Sign
you go.
me up.
Downloads every single week. For Robin Black, John Ramsey, and I'm John Pollock. Catch Fight News Now Extra coming up.